Are you trying to land your next role in test automation? Wondering what interviewers really ask when it comes to web automation frameworks? From manual web testing to WebdriverIO, from architecture to best practices, we've got you covered. In this video, we'll walk you through real-world interview questions. You are going to have a lot of tips to structure your answers for the interview and insights to help you stand out of the crowd. Let's dive into questions that matter. But first thing first, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I'm Yannis Papadakis. I'm based in Athens, Greece. I'm a head of QA at Snappi. I really love working in all things that touch product and engineering. I really love public speaking. It's one of my passions. I have traveled around the globe in different technical conferences, sharing my knowledge to the community. And I'm really loving everything that touches meetups. So we're building local meetups to share knowledge with our community members. In my free time, I love hiking and fishing. This is my email. You can get more information about me in the end and connect with me with any questions that you may have. So LambdaTest is a Gen AI powerful platform, and it uses a lot of different features nowadays. But the core features of this is supporting cross-browser testing. You can run multiple manual or automated tests across a variety, like thousands of browser versions and operating systems, or even real iOS and Android devices if you are doing mobile automation. It has unique features like hyper execute, 𝐭eNAI. For example, 𝐭eNAI is an AI native assistant that helps you build more efficient and author more efficient end-to-end tests using natural language. A lot of AI agents. This is the AI world and how they are shaping and improving our LambdaTest platform. It's really cool and great. So the next question, the first one, let's say we'll start with the interview questions with a good pace. We'll start a little bit with the beginner level, and the beginner level will improve your knowledge if you don't know so much about WebdriverIO, or if the position you're interviewed is for a more junior level. I think it's a good case for you to start experimenting. So the first thing to do is to discuss about WebdriverIO and what the WebdriverIO. It's a powerful and flexible test automation framework. When it comes to this question, the first answer is it's a powerful framework. It can be used for both web and mobile applications. It's built on top of Node.js. It's particularly popular for both web and mobile apps. Anyone that has knowledge to build on top of JavaScript or TypeScript, this is the framework for you. It uses internally Selenium and WebDriver, but it also supports Chrome, DevTools protocol, or per se CDP in order to have faster execution. These are three top answers for your first interview question. The next one, which is the more, let's say, sophisticated one, is how do you start with this framework? What are the, if your interview is about, okay, let me know how to set up a project from ground zero. What are the needed steps? So first is to use a package manager like NPM. You can use NPM init to just initialize your project. The next is to install the dependency in order to run or execute your test, which is the CLI. Then you can use a configuration wizard. WebdriverIO is providing this. If you run npx wdo config, it will start the wizard. It will ask you several questions like where to put your tests, what type of reporting you want to use, what platform, Selenium Grid, Lambda test, what's your base URL, and then it spits out a wdo conf.js file in the root directory of your project. We're going to see more examples in the next questions. And then you can write your test and actually run it with a final answer, which is npx wdo run wdo conf.js. And with this way, you are good to go and start experimenting and running your tests. Now, the next question is, and here where I need your emphasis because we are going to do a real example. How and what types of weight should we use when it comes to WebdriverIO? What are available? There are three types of weights, but by default, the first questions, the ones that are coming, let's say by default from WebdriverIO, is implicit weight, and the other one is the explicit weight. The third category is the custom weights. You can build your own weight functionality using your programming language. You can build your own TypeScript function to wait for a specific condition. But for the first two, let's explain a little bit in detail. Implicit weight is injected in the browser instance. This is a fundamental object from WebdriverIO that interacts with our browsers. And we can set a global timeout when it comes to finding elements on the DOM. This is not recommended because it's statically waiting for the particular amount of time, and it can produce some unpredictable behavior. We're going to talk in a later question. And the explicit wait, which is the most commonly used nowadays, you can wait for a specific condition to be true before moving forward. So I'm going to share my screen and get an example going on before moving to the next stage. So let's remove, and this is our project. It's going to be shared. This is a GitHub repo with all the examples for the interview questions to get yourself up to speed with a lot of examples and tips. Now, the weights, there is a test over here that we have built. This project, by the way, we are using the WDO config wizard to initialize this project, so everything is very quickly. You can set up a project in a couple of seconds. We use page object design pattern to actually have the implementation of our tests outside of the logic of the test. There's a known design pattern. We're going to talk in the advanced level, but for now, what I want to get your eyes on is, in the first example, we are waiting for a text. The condition here is that I'm waiting a specific element with this locator to have, so this is my my function with the explicit wait, the wait for text. And the other one down here, we are setting a global timeout implicitly for 5 seconds, which is static wait for this timeout for all the calls that we're trying to find elements in my DOM. So if I go within the wait for text, you will see this function. Again, here what needs to be seen is the browser wait until. This is the API from WebdriverIO that we can wait for a specific condition. And the condition is this one. The condition, what I'm doing is I'm waiting for a specific locator. I'm getting the text of this locator, and I'm expecting in this timeout to have the specific text. If it's not, we are throwing an exception. We are stopping the execution. So at the time, as soon as it finds this element with this text, it will continue execution. It's by far the best approach using explicit waits. So let's go back to our presentation. So the presentation here says we said about the explicit waits. The next question is really tricky. How do you handle browser pop-ups in WebdriverIO? It's very unique. There are different kinds of pop-ups. The answers to this interview question is what type of pop-ups we're trying to automate, because it's really critical to get your answer to the interviewer. First, we have the most known one, which are the JavaScript alerts. So JavaScript alerts are system alerts coming part of your browser. It's not like they are initiated, but WebdriverIO has a unique way to handle JavaScript alerts. We're going to see this example. Authentication pop-ups. This can be bypassed by accessing your authentication credentials through your browser URL function. And the custom model dialogues, sometimes they are part of the DOM, and just by finding the correct elements in the DOM, you can actually bypass and handle these pop-ups. This particular example here on the screen, the first one is the browser URL. These are all about authentication pop-ups. You can bypass it like this. The second one is the modal ones. You find the selector like an element with ID modal. This is our modal, and then you can close it, you can do some interaction with it. And the last one, which is the JavaScript alerts, using browser.acceptAlert or dismiss alert, you can do a lot of handling around these alerts. And this is by default, let's say, functions provided from WebdriverIO. Now, the last question is, what browser commands are used in WebdriverIO? If your interviewer asks about this, you need to ask yourself and reply back with a question, what we are trying to automate? Because there are plenty of browser commands. You can use URL, for example, which is the first answer. You can navigate to your web page. You can use the get window handle to take the handle of your or the focus on your window. And browser execute, it's a nice example if you want to execute some JavaScript within your browser. These are just three that it came to my mind. A tip here to ask to the interviewer is, what are we trying to automate? Because there are plenty of commands that we can use for this particular reason. Now, let's go to the intermediate level. This level is a little bit one step further to prepare you in the interview. And we will start with the first question. How do you run WebdriverIO tests in parallel? First thing first is the most profound answer to this interview question is you can use max instances on your WebDriver conf.js file. This file contains the configuration, the global configuration, and then you need to know and answer to this question that you can have the max instances is the different number of workers the WebdriverIO can start and run in parallel your tests. But in order to run it, you need to split your tests across different spec files. You don't need to have only one spec file because the workers are running against multiple spec files. Be mindful to have independency in your tests. So when it comes to your interview question, we are not answering, you can answer, I can split my tests in different specs, and that's how we can run tests in parallel, but we need to make sure the tests are independent. And then you can use a platform like Selenium Grid or Lambda Test to just distribute the tests in different devices or versions. What's the issue of browser pause function in WebdriverIO? Very nice question, and easy peasy. We're going to show a lot of examples here, but first, the most profound answer is hard-coded wait times. The pause, it's actually like slipping a thread. You are pausing your browser execution for this specific amount of time. If a condition is more than the pause time that you have, then you have flaky tests, which is the next answer. We don't want flaky tests. So this is problematic due to this. And it's not scalable. Why? Because you need faster execution times. You don't need slow execution. So you need more dynamic conditions when you have a large scale project and you have maybe hundreds of tests running on your UI. You need to be very, very fast and quick. So let's see an example before going to the next part with the pause. So the pause, I have created this script. We have two tests. The first test is the one that is using the pause. As you can see here, I have my pause. I'm logging into the system, and then I'm pausing, and then I'm checking for some things some conditions to be in the browser complied. So in the next one, we are using wait for to see the difference. The difference here of the same test is that I'm using the explicit wait. So I'm using a condition like I want to find this element to be displayed in my screen, and I'm using a wait for displayed explicit wait from WebdriverIO, and I'm using 5 seconds explicitly wait for this element to be present. Between these categories, the only difference is that the tests will be much faster when I run these tests. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to change my conf.js to use the pause script, and I'm going to run my script from here. I'm going to see that it will open my browser. It will run sequentially if we don't have parallel execution. I'm using Heroku, just a demo site here, and it's running in the same session sequentially. That's why you are seeing one driver session being executing, and we are seeing the test. You don't see much detail, but when it comes to comparing the time, if you have a reporter, you can see how much time it will take. In the static pause, it will take 5 seconds. In the dynamic part, it can take less than 5 seconds. So imagine that, like multiplying in hundreds of test cases, how much efficient will be, not efficient will be if you are using the dot pause functionality. So let's go back, and I'm going to add to stage my presentation. So the next question is, how do you manage session data between your WebdriverIO tests? It's a very critical question. It has some few answers here that it's make well prepared when it comes to your interview. You can use the get cookies and set cookies functionality to get the cookies, because the cookies contain the information for the authentication data. So for example, this particular example, I want to share my session data, which are, I want to authenticate in one browser window, and I want to go open a new one, and just share my session data through the cookies. You can use the hooks to just prepare and implement the whole functionality of getting the cookies outside of your test scope, or you can use a custom service. I can give you an example here. We'll go back to my presentation. From presentation to VS Code, I have created a script which is called session data. This is a nice one. You can actually see that there are a couple of features here you can share within your interview, but it's really cool. We can use the process.env, and you will see here I'm also importing the .env library. What I'm passing dynamic data from environment variables. If you can see, we have the .env local file. I'm setting some environment variables, some secrets, some more security sensitive data, and to my test. It's not part of this particular example. We are going to cover it in the advanced level. But for now, keep it in mind, we can spend some data outside of configuration files. So here, what I'm doing, the set session function, what I have created, it's doing the get cookies. So it's getting the cookies of my session. I'm then opening a new browser window here. I need a separate window, and I want to, in this separate window, to pass my data. And how I'm going to do that, I'm going to get the cookies from the list and set the cookies over here in order to set to the new window the cookies that contains the information for the session. And in the end, just refresh your browser to take effect with the session data, and everything magically will have your user in the session logged in the second window. Now, let's see the example. I'm going to run this example. It's using the Lambda test application page. I'm going to set some breakpoints first after, setting the new window, just to have a reference to see how it's being executed. But first, I need to go to my conf.js file and set the session end-to-end TypeScript file to run the tests. So if I run my tests, we'll see the instance first navigating to my application, which is the Lambda test playground. What I'm doing here, I'm logging in. It stopped because I wanted to stop like this here. So this is the presentation. So I see the two windows. In the first window, what I did is I authenticated to my system. The second window has the authenticated user, so I can see that the user is already authenticated. I don't see authenticated because it's logged in for a reason. Let me see if something wrong with my. Yeah, I have actually. Sorry, I have two environment files. I need to delete one to trust. and this one is the correct one. So if I run it again, hopefully I'm going to see the correct details now being executed. Right. So I'm running my authentication. So I'm getting a new window after that. I see that the customer is not yet registered. Interesting about this. I need to rerun it again. But what we are, if you rerun your example, the user should be passed with the cookies in the next session appropriately. So I'm going to stop debugging, and I think maybe that could be the reason. And rerun one more time and see if we have properly set all the environment variables. Yes, they are correct. For a reason, I need to run it again. But that will be the function that corresponds to this question. Let me run it again one more time. Yeah, it's not working properly, but I'm going to set it up appropriately in the test. So this is the way that you are passing session between your tests, and this is a nice example. Let's go back to my let's say presentation, and let's go with the next question, which is how do you automate shadow DOM elements with WebdriverIO? We can use predefined API and functions like shadow $, and double sign, or you can use the execute. This is the two answers to this interview question. It has a predefined API, the shadow API, to interact with these shadow elements, or you can create your own custom implementation to do this using the browser execute. Now, if I go back again for this particular question to my VS Code, you will see I have created one nice example with the two ways. The first way is to highlight the elements using the shadow element. Here you will see this element is inside the host. That's the whole meaning. You cannot interact with it just by using the DOM selector. You need to focus within the shadow root element in order to interact with this shadow element. So first, I'm using the shadow root element, which is the host, in order to interact with it. Secondly, I'm using this as a parent to catch the child element using the shadow $API function to actually locate the element within the root and do whatever I need to do with this. I'm using this to highlight this element here. The second approach is to use the browser execute. You see a lot of difference over here because the implementation is entirely up to you to decide how to implement it. You will see I'm locating again the host element using the document query selector because now I have access and I'm executing JavaScript in my page. And the shadow root, after we have the host, I'm calling the shadow root element, and from the shadow root, I can get my button based on the selector. And then if we find this button, just click into it as normally. I will need to highlight and make a click function being executed on the particular element. Now, this is the type of example. You can execute your test. It would just highlight the example, nothing really critical. And let's go back to my so the last question for the intermediate level is how do you create custom commands in WebdriverIO? So this particular question, there are two answers. You can create a browser level command or you can create an element level command. The browser level is a more global one. You can you can use this command for all the actions you are doing within your browser. The element is specific to the element that you're trying to find. I think we are covering two examples here. The first in the left, it's a command that you are creating for the browser. the login, that you can locate elements. And for example, here I created a command login to find some elements and do the login functionality implement. And the next one is the highlight, which I'm using the browser execute to highlight a specific element. And this can be a global one as well for all the elements that we are locating in the page. Now, the last part of our this video is the advanced level. So you are very capable right now with yourself, and where you know what to do. It comes to the critical part of the interview. Okay, now, but we need to cover some advanced topics and be very mindful how to reply back to these advanced topics. Let's get things moving and start with the first question. How would you test single-page applications or SPAs in WebdriverIO? I have some few answers here, but it's entirely up to you to decide what's the best when it comes to that. In order to be very, very quickly equipped, single-page applications requires a more different approach when it comes to traditional, let's say, multi-page apps. So the first answer would go is I want to wait for elements dynamically, and don't want static slips or whatever. There can be the dynamic nature of the content, which is the next answer. Route changes without having full page reloads. We can have a sync content loading. So here you need to handle this dynamic way because SPAs in their way, they are often load data synchronously. So create reusable components and commands like I want to have common functionality covered SPAs like logging in, navigating, waiting for some route to change, which is a dynamic content, and organize the last one, your SPAs to page object model. Why? Because we need to keep our code clean and maintainable. That would be the best answer when it comes to this question. Now, how do you handle multiple browser windows in WebdriverIO? We'll give the final example of this video. This is the WebdriverIO comes with a unique set of APIs to interact and open multiple window handles, managing focus between the windows. And for that reason, I'm going to share again my screen and see the final example, removing this. So I have created a test which is doing the whole thing with the handles. You will see here I'm navigating to Heroku app. In my test, I can use the browser get window handle. This is the first function that I can use to get the handle of the window. Then I'm clicking on an element that most likely will spawn a new window. So what I'm doing here, I'm waiting dynamically for this window to appear because it can take a few seconds or not. And thus I want the dynamic way to wait. So what I'm doing is I'm waiting, I'm getting the window handles, and if the length is more than one, I'm going to get all the handles after that, and I'm going to switch to the latest one. So here you will see, sorry for that, I'm switching to the latest window handle based on the array of handles that we have. And from now on, we can do some cool things in the new handle. And then we want to close as well the window handle. There is a function even for that. And then I want to switch back to my original window handle. So as you can see here, browser instance can provide all the functions to get the focus to new window handles, but you need to create your own custom logic to finish that. So when it comes to your questions, yes, it can create we can handle based on a function to open a window or a tab. We can get the window handles. We can switch to another window or even close and switch back to my previous window. How do you configure WDO-conf.js for large projects? This is particularly proud when it comes to this question. There are a lot of answers, again, some of the questions, but we can give you some tips to be mindful when you are actually answering these questions. When you are configuring a large project, you need to have in mind how to split your configuration files. The first tip is You don't need a big conf file. You can split it to multiple configuration files. You can have multiple configuration files based on the platform you are running. For example, Lambda test. I will give you an example. Based on the organization of your test suites, we can have different test suites. For example, sanity, regression, and so being mindful how to set this on your conf file. Environment variables, if you are using them, you need to be mindful to inject them within the conf file. And the custom reporters, which is the last thing. There are a bunch of custom reporters provided and supported from WebdriverIO. They can be configured nicely on the 𝐭F.js file. So let's see an example, and let's see an example of how we can split against different configuration files. In this example, I have created one, which is the default one, but I have created also another one, which is called lambda test conf ts file. So what is this is doing? Let's say you have you want to have your platform for spawning your tests in the device farm of lambda test. So here I'm extending the base config from the WDO conf ts file, and I'm setting the service lambda test in order to run my tests of this particular product, which is more complex, against lambda test, which is a cool way to just run your tests. What I'm going to do, run everything. I can run everything, all the tests on my lambda test based on this configuration file. I can use also the maxed instances to parallelize some tests, but this depends on the way you are using lambda tests. I can use 3 because my plan contains 3, and I can have my capabilities on browser Chrome, let's say. From here on, I can define that I'm not going to use this conf file, but actually the lambda test conf.ts file. So let's run it and keep things moving. So from here, I can open my lambda test platform. And if I go to my dashboard, I can see it start executing my tests sequentially or in parallel. This all depends how you are automating them, and everything executing in the browser platform, and you can see details. With that way, you can have different conf file. Maybe you can have one for lambda test, another for different set of tests you are running, sanity, smoke, we said earlier. So this is the whole idea of this question and this answer. You'd be very mindful how do you set up conf.js, particularly useful to set up different configurations for running your tests. Now, the last 2 questions is, what strategies would you use to manage large-scale WebdriverIO tests? This is a nice one. Again, there are a lot of strategies, but what I get to answer to an interviewer here, I'm particularly useful to use project structure and modularity. I want to use as part of my strategy the page object model as much as possible, organize my features per domain, group tests like all pages by feature, use utility helpers. But not only this. The next thing is the test suite management. I want to tag my tests. As I said earlier, we need to have tags like tests that can run as smoke, regression, sanity, or different subsets. We have the configuration strategy. I want to have environment variable file and environment files to manage CI secrets for sensitive data like credentials, URLs, or even configure your parallel execution to a different level. And the last one is the reporting. I need to make sure in my strategy I have the best reporter in place. I have screenshots, I have videos, I have all the information for the developers to actually analyze things. Then the next is, again, this another set of answers. CI/CD integration is also an answer here. Testability should be part of my strategy. advanced tools and plugins, and scalability practices as much as possible. We need to run in parallel across different mobile devices or browsers. We need to use Selenium Grid Lambda test as much as possible. We need to Dockerize environments and monitor test performance as much as possible, of course. And the last question, how do you debug WebdriverIO tests when it comes to CI/CD? Now, debugging tests can be tricky when it comes to CI/CD pipeline because you don't have direct access to it, right? Sometimes you need to enable detailed logging. You need to have a platform like New Relic or Grafana and Loki, a platform that can digest your logs and be accessible on all the time, and for your team to go there and experiment with the logs. You need to have video and screenshots available all the time. Lambda test has a very cool feature here. You can have links to your execution from your CI to go and directly see your videos and screenshots. And observability and monitoring culture, because this is a type of answer to give to the interview that you are keen on shaping an observability culture. And if you have observability culture in place, you can observe how things are moving in your CI/CD pipeline, and you can go and fix issues, on the spot with that. So with this way, I think we are covered the whole concept of the video. You are prepared for your next interview with all the tips and tricks. We try to cover all the levels. You have the code repo. You can experiment with all these solutions and being mindful when you are describing your problems and your answers to the interview. You need to make sure there is not a golden rule or one answer to this type of question, and make it more practical to the interviewer that you are experimenting with a different set of questions and a different set of answers when it comes to WebDriver.